Christopher Kane nursed his steaming cup of black coffee, the porcelain mug a small island of warmth in the cool ambiance of Wanda's diner. Neon signs buzzed outside, casting long, lurid shadows within the dimly lit confines of the diner. The drizzle on the window pane refracted the neon glow into a myriad of distorted hues, a sad, colorful carnival in the twilight of Sterling Heights, Michigan. He was a picture of stillness, of solid presence, amid the clatter of forks and hushed murmur of tired voices, the city's nightly symphony of life and living. Time stood sentinel as he stared out at the rain-soaked city, his thoughts a maelstrom of memories and dread. An unexpected brush of contact jolted him from his reverie. It was the diner's waiter, a middle-aged man with thinning hair and worry-worn eyes, discreetly sliding a thick manila envelope across the table. He offered Kane a solemn nod, their shared silence wrapping them in a conspiracy of the moment. The envelope bore the sterling emblem of the local police precinct, a sight that sent a jolt through Kane's otherwise calm demeanor. He gripped the envelope with the anticipation of a bomb disposal expert, his fingertips tracing over the embossed surface. Inside, a cascade of grainy photos and typed reports sprawled out onto the plastic tabletop. 5 faces, 5 lives abruptly ended in grotesque fashion. Each victim was tied to the police precinct, a sinister weave connecting them all, a knot in the belly of Sterling Heights. His heart pounded a staccato rhythm, his mind racing to draw connections, his past trauma merging with the present, unfolding mystery. As he absorbed the information, his face hardened, the lines deepened, his gray eyes reflecting the storm that was both outside and within. He was a man who bore his past like an unwelcome guest, its specter sitting next to him, visible only in his tight lips and furrowed brow. "What in the blazes is going on, Chris?" Kane's trusty old friend, Benjamin Ellis, slid into the booth opposite him. The worry was etched clear on his face, a mirror of Kane's own apprehension. "I wish I knew, Ben," he responded, his voice a gravelly whisper that fought to contain his mounting concern. He gestured at the ominous envelope's contents. "I can't help but think this is just the beginning of something bigger." He finished, his gaze not on his old friend, but on the darkened city beyond the diner's window, the rain now pouring relentlessly. As the weight of his statement hung in the air, the last vestiges of the day slipped away, surrendering the city to the reign of night and all the monsters it promised to unleash. Sterling Heights had plunged into a storm, one of rain and one of rising fear. This was just the quiet before it. The real storm was yet to roar and rattle the life he knew, as the story of his survival was about to intertwine with an unfathomable cosmic horror. Sterling Heights Police Station, once an emblem of law and order, now stood under a shroud of shadows, its stone edifice silent and brooding. Like an ancient sentinel, it held secrets within its thick walls that twisted its hallways into a veritable labyrinth of silence and dread. Kane, with years of service etched into his weathered face, navigated its treacherous maze with a practiced ease that did little to alleviate the mounting unease. Footsteps echoed, reverberating through the cold, unforgiving corridors. Doors with frosted glass pane bore names of men and women he had worked with, laughed with. Now they were cryptic epitaphs, haunted by echoes of the departed. The air buzzed with a tension so tangible, it seemed to press against his skin, like an unseen predator circling its prey. Pushing open the door to the morgue, a gust of chilled, sterile air greeted him, a stark contrast to the precinct's oppressive atmosphere. Dr. Helen Weir, the medical examiner, a woman whose stern demeanor was only softened by her compassionate eyes, greeted him with a tired nod. "Chris," she acknowledged, her gaze never leaving the stark white sheet that covered the latest casualty from the precinct. "You've seen the reports," her voice trailed, carrying a weight heavier than the silence that wrapped the room. He nodded, moving to stand beside her. Underneath the sheet lay Officer Perkins, his face ashen and eyes vacant, as if they'd stared into the very heart of horror itself. "No signs of struggle," she pointed out, her clinical detachment making the reality somehow even more horrifying. "But this," she gestured towards a recorded transcript. The last word he spoke, caught on the precinct's voice recorder, It's like nothing I've ever seen. Kane picked up the transcript, his eyes scanning the cryptic, unpronounceable, and undecipherable phrase. A chill skittered down his spine. The word echoed in his mind, as if a key unlocked something deep within. "We found the same phrase with each of the victims, Chris," Helen added, her voice barely a whisper now, her eyes mirroring his apprehension. A sense of dread clung to him as he left the morgue, a phantom that seemed to grow with each step. He spent the remainder of the day probing, questioning his colleagues, their voices growing softer, eyes darting away. Whispers swirled around him, the station filled with a tempest of fear, paranoia, and suspicion. As he left the precinct, the sinking sun cast long shadows, the city turning into an unrecognizable landscape under the twilight. The once familiar sight of Sterling Heights was now an ominous labyrinth, home to secrets that twisted reality into an enigma. Walking down the stone steps, the envelope's content echoed in his mind. The cryptic last words of the victims, the eerie silence, the fear that hung around the precinct like a thick fog. The gut feeling of a conspiracy larger than he could fathom. The city was slipping into the hands of an invisible menace, as if a shroud of shadows was slowly descending upon them all. Sterling Heights, his city, was not just a victim, it was a key player in this unfolding cosmic horror. As the day melted into the night, he found himself standing on the precipice of an abyss, his next step leading him deeper into the unknown, drawing him towards the dread-filled underbelly of the city. Underneath the concrete and steel of Sterling Heights thrummed a network of tunnels, a secret realm where man's touch had not tarnished the primal rawness. Kane, against the backdrop of the city's underbelly, was a solitary figure, his flashlight a beacon piercing the abyss. The haunting echoes of his past, the tremors and the dread, seemed to merge with the spectral silence of the tunnels, as if in a chilling duet. Here, far beneath the world he knew, the pulse of his city was a fearful heartbeat, a sonorous rhythm that twined around him, snaking its way into the hollow spaces within him. The walls, seemingly hewn by time itself, bore strange etchings that swirled and twisted, reminiscent of the cryptic phrase that had unsettled the precinct. In the spectral glow of his torchlight, the symbols danced, their eeriness magnified by the ethereal luminescence that seemed to bleed from the very stones. He could almost hear them whisper, their voices the susurrus of ancient tongues. "Kane, are you seeing this?" The voice crackled over his walkie-talkie, breaking the echoing silence. It was Ellis, somewhere above in the world of the living, yet bound by the same thread of unfolding mystery. "Yeah, Ben, I see it," he responded, his voice barely above a whisper, the weight of his discovery bearing down on him. Their conversation spiraled into theories, conjectures, their words bouncing off the cold stone, each revelation leading to a dozen more questions. With each step deeper, Kane felt the undercurrent of fear transform into a palpable entity, as if the city itself was trembling in the face of an unseen terror. As he ventured further into the depths, an overwhelming energy surged around him. The walls appeared to pulse, the symbols shimmering as though alive. He felt the fabric of reality grow thin, his mind teetering on the precipice of understanding and madness. An enigma far beyond his comprehension was manifesting right beneath Sterling Heights. "Something's happening here, Ben. Something beyond us," Kane admitted, his voice echoing the dread resonating through the tunnel's depths. Time lost meaning as he navigated the labyrinthine tunnels, each moment stretched taut with impending horror. He was a speck of humanity in the yawning maw of the cosmic abyss, the echoes of his heartbeat becoming a drumroll to an inevitable climax. Retracing his steps, he emerged from the labyrinth into the world he once knew, his senses heightened, his mind brimming with dread. The world above was changing, an unseen dread wrapping its tendrils around Sterling Heights. He found himself caught in a web spun by an ancient cosmic conspiracy, unknowingly stepping onto a path that would lead him face to face with the unspeakable horror beneath his city. As Kane descended once more into the sinewy labyrinth beneath Sterling Heights, he felt an intangible thread pulling him deeper into the unfathomable. The pulsating energy grew stronger, the cryptic symbols glowing with an unholy radiance. illuminating the eternal gloom of the tunnels. Each step, each breath was a symphony of dread and anticipation that echoed within the ancient subterranean network. Deeper still, he confronted it, an entity of monstrous scale, an unfathomable cosmic horror lurking in the depths of the earth. It was a paradox, a shape that defied the laws of physics, and an energy that made reality quiver at its seams. An alien consciousness, a dreadful maw of the cosmos, its formlessness somehow more terrifying than any physical monster. He felt its overwhelming presence reaching out to him, siphoning the life force, just as it had from the unfortunate victims from the Precinct. His mind teetered on the edge of oblivion, filled with visions of galaxies dying and being born, of cosmic truths that shattered his understanding of reality. "Chris, do you copy?" "Chris." Ellis's voice on the walkie-talkie was a distant echo, a desperate plea from another reality. Kane could barely respond, his own voice a broken whisper, a futile resistance against the monstrous entity. "Ben, I've found it. God, it's..." His voice trailed into silence, words inadequate to describe the eldritch horror before him. Through sheer will, he broke free from its insidious grasp, the world around him snapping back to reality. He staggered, his heart thundering, his sanity hanging by a thread. Fleeing the monstrous entity, he emerged from the tunnel's mouth, the night sky a comforting shroud of normalcy. His world was irrevocably changed, the familiar cityscape now carrying the weight of the cosmic horror beneath its streets. He was a man on the edge of madness, marked indelibly by his encounter with the ineffable. His exit from Sterling Heights was not a victory march, but an escape of a survivor, a solitary figure disappearing into the twilight. He left behind a city ensnared in the tentacles of an ancient cosmic horror, its pulse beating in time with the monstrous entity beneath. As the last rays of the sun bled into the horizon, Sterling Heights stood silhouetted against the dying light, its surface calm, belying the dread that throbbed beneath its heart. Christopher Kane, a loyal and persistent detective, was forever changed by his descent into madness, his narrative ending with an ambiguity that echoed the traditional cosmic horror fashion. In this world brimming with unspeakable horrors, he had not just survived, but transformed, his existence now a haunting melody of a symphony left unfinished. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, like it and subscribe to our channel, where you can find more similar stories, and click on the bell icon to never miss one. There is plenty more cosmic horror to come from the Eldritch Tales Factory. Stay tuned, and until next time.